Hey everyone, welcome to another Flutter tutorial. In this video, we'll be looking at creating our widgets using TDD. So we'll be using test to drive the creation of our widgets so that we will have our test represent what we expect of our widget. And I know oftentimes we use TDD for services and other parts of the application, but it's just as beneficial to use it when doing our widget testing. So let's get right into it. And as you can see here, I have already set up the initial project and have a empty registration page here with a simple scaffold. So what I am going to do in this video is to create a simple registration form, and we will create that form by writing the test first and what we expect of this page and what should happen when certain things are clicked on this page. So let's go into our test folder here, and I'm going to create a file called registration tests. And since this is a widget test, what I'll do is to copy this here quickly. Then I'll get rid of all these comments. And I'll get rid of these. And now that I am beginning to write the test for my registration page, the first thing I'm going to test is that the page has a title. So I'm going to say should have title registration. So let's go ahead, and instead of pumping my app here, what I want to do is to pump the page itself. But the page cannot work by itself, so I'll have to wrap that in a material app. So I'll create a material app, and then for the home I'll call my page. So now we have pumped our widget so that it's ready for testing. So now what I'm gonna do is to say finder, and what I'm looking for is the title. So I'm gonna use the find method here, which is the common finders, and I'm gonna say text. So find text, and I expect that text to be registration. So now for my expect, I am expecting that title and the matcher would be finds one widget. That's what I'm expecting. So if I should run this now, of course it should fail since that is not present there. So let me go ahead and run this test. And as you can see, the test is failing. And if I should look on the console here, you should see it's saying that there's a failure because exactly one matching node in the widget tree. 0 widgets for registration means none were found, which is what we're expecting. So now we can go to our registration page and now add the title. So I'm gonna add that in the app bar. So I'm gonna say app bar. I'm gonna create an app bar here, and then the title, I am going to add that text. registration. So now we have our title registration. If I go back to my test and run that again, now I can see that my test is passing. So the next test, now I want to create the form and the different fields that I'm collecting as inputs from the users. So first thing I want is the user's name. So I'm going to say should have field that collects user's name. I'm going to go ahead and pump the form again, but this time I am going to say username or just name, but this time instead of searching for a text, what I'll be looking for is the type. So I'm going to say find by type, and what I want is a text form field. So now I'm expecting name to have one widget also. Again, if I run this test, it should fail. As you can see, we have the test failing. So if I go to my registration page now and let us create our form. So in the body of the scaffold, I want a column, or rather a form, and then for that form I want a column, and then this column for its children, and I'm gonna say cross-axis alignment here, let it be center, and for the children of this column I want a text form field. Go ahead and save that. Now I won't be trying to style this or anything. I'm just showing you guys the process of test driving your widget creation. But I'll just wrap this in a padding. Let this be symmetric, and the horizontal axis be 20 pixels. So I'm just padding the left and right edges. So now you see we have a text form field here that is showing up here. Now if we run our test again, then it should pass. It should find one text form field, and there we have the test passing. But I am going to style this text form field just a little bit, the sense that I want to give it a decoration. And so I can add a hint, and here I'll just say name. So now we have the hint being name. Another way we can check this in the test is by assigning a key to each field. So in this sense, I can give this a key, say username. And then in my registration, I can say find by key, so that I can find each element. So for each form field, instead of finding by type, which would return a list of form fields, I can say find by key, value key, username, and this should be good enough to give me the same results. So if I run the test again, I am expecting just 1, and there we have a passing test. So let me add another form field. Just gonna copy and paste this. I'm gonna call this email, and I'm gonna call that email there. And then I'll copy my test here. So I should have field that collects email. So now it's the same thing. All we have to do is say email. And we run our tests. And there we have our test passing. Now we can also check that we have a button that submits the form. Should have a register button. This time I'm gonna find by type, and here I'm just gonna find a elevated button. Let me change this to email, this to email. Then here, let's change this to register. So now again, run the test. It should fail since there is no registration button present. There we have a failing test. Now we go to our form and we add that button. So let us say I'm just gonna add some space here, size box with a height of say 50 pixels. And now we can add our elevated button. We'll leave the on press for now. And then for its child, we need a text that says register. So there we have our button. So now if we go back to our test, we run our test again. So now we have our test passing. So now we want to check that our form is being validated. So I'm just gonna copy this and I'm gonna say should show error message for invalid fields. So I want the error text, and I'm gonna say by text containing text, and I'm just gonna say required field, and I'm gonna run this test on both fields being empty. So I'm expecting it to have multiple required fields. So I'm just gonna say finds n widgets, and n here is 2. So find 2 widgets with required field. So let's run the test there. There we have our failing test. Now to our registration form to configure this so that the test passes. So to get this working, we need to set up a key for our form and also to add validators to the form field. So just go ahead and create that key. I'm just going to create a global key, and this key is going to be of type form state. I'm just going to call it form key, and I'll instantiate it here. So now we have our key. Let's add our key to our form. So form key equals to form key. Now we have our form key. Let us go ahead and add validations to our text form. So for the validator, which is a function, it's a nullable type string, then this function, I'm gonna say if the value, and since it's nullable, I'm gonna use the coalescing operator to set it to an empty string if it is null. So if it is empty, then return the error message required field, otherwise return null. I am going to copy this same validator here and paste it here. And as you can see, since this is an email field, we can add validations to validate that the format is an email format, but I'm not going to do that now since I'm only showing you guys a process. So now we have our validator set up. We can now set up our on press. So what I want to do is that whenever the user press the button, I want to get the form key, get the current state of the form, and then go ahead and say validate. So now if I go back to my test, I need to say, I first need to find the button. So I need to say finder or register equals to find by type. The type here is the elevated button, and since I have that, what I want to say is to say await tester, and then I'm gonna tap the button. So in this case, I want to tap the registration button. Then when I tap that button, what I'm going to do again is to say tester pump and settle, and as you can see, it repeatedly call pump with the given duration until there are no longer any frames. So it basically refreshes the frame so that the new state is reflected on the screen. So I want to pump and settle, and then after I press the button, since I haven't entered any fields in the text fields, in the form fields, then I am expecting the validation should fail and required fields should be displayed. So if I run this, let's see if it is working as it should. And there we have our test passing. And now we can click our button and we see the exact same behavior there, required field, required field. But we use our test to test drive what we are expecting, the kind of behavior we are expecting from our registration page here. So now let us write a test for what will happen when our form is valid, when we enter valid information. So should submit form when valid. So I have my first, let us enter some text in the text field. So let's go with await tester, and here we can say enter text, and we'll have to add the finder here. In this case, we can copy our finder from here where we are finding by the key. So we're gonna use our finder here, find by key, and we're gonna enter some text, user. So this will enter, this should be entering, as you can see here, we need the finder, then our text. So let us create the finder here first. So finder username, add that there. Okay, great. So we should be able to put it there. So what we're doing is that we're finding the username text field and we're entering user. And we can do the same thing for our email field. Email. So now, if we go ahead and tap the button again, then there shouldn't be no error. So for this test, we can simply say finds nothing, because there shouldn't be any error. So if we run the test now, we should expect that it would pass. And there we have our test passing, because if we have values here and submit, then there shouldn't be any error. So the required field error message should not be displayed. And that's it, guys. Quick and simple tutorial just to show you guys how you can actually build out your widget by writing test first. And I think this is a good way to go about it, since you will have solid coverage of your application. You will be covering the different screens, and you'll be more confident in terms of its behavior, since you would have already written tests to test those expected behavior. Thank you guys for tuning into this video, and see you in the next one. Remember to like, share, and to subscribe if you enjoy the content. See you in the next one.